Hello and welcome to the show. This is Immortal Index episode 3, where we talk about all things Wuxia and Xianxia. We got a really good episode for you guys today. I'm really excited to talk about all the things we're going on. We're going to be talking about the new VIP ad-free system on WuxiaWorld.com. We're going to talk about how the free credit works if you sign up for that right now, because I actually don't know when they're going to stop offering that free credit. And we're going to be talking about a Will Eternal sponsorship levels with, you guessed it, Deathblade himself will be Skyping into the show, which is crazy because it's such a big time difference because he lives in China, obviously. So it's really great that he can call in and talk to us about it and kind of explain some of the questions that you guys might have had. It's kind of an FAQ of sorts. After that, we're going to be talking a little bit about Little Shanks' translation of Mad Snail's Rebirth of the Thief Who Roamed the World. Mad Snail is most widely known for his novel Tales of Demons and Gods. It's a pretty good one. There's a few other stories he does, but Tales of Demons and Gods and Rebirth of the Thief Who Roamed the World are the furthest along in their English translation. So yeah, again, thank you for watching or listening, however you're watching the show, however you're consuming this content. Please follow the show at Immortal Index on Twitter, soundcloud.com/Immortal Index Podcast, and search for it on iTunes. All you have to do is type in Xianxia, Xianxia, and you can also just search Immortal Index and you'll find it. And remember, if you subscribe and leave a comment on iTunes, you will get a shout out on the show. First off, I want to discuss last week's poll because I was really excited to see kind of what people thought, because I feel like the last polls were so neck and neck that there wasn't exactly too much to discuss. But I'm not going to dive too deep on it, but the last week's poll was, what's your favorite theme or cliche in a Xianxia or Wuxia novel? The options were space rings, reincarnation, heavenly oaths, and auction houses. And I was really excited to see that the results were a lot more spread out this time. So 31% of you liked space rings, 27% liked reincarnation, 19% liked heavenly oaths, and 23% liked auction houses. I was really surprised that auction houses beat heavenly oaths. Very, very, very surprised. But I think what this poll really told me was that everyone reads these novels for something different. Everyone has those moments that they like and moments that they dislike. And I think that's a really cool thing as a community, that these novels have so many different literary elements that you may not be a fan of, but there's something else that you're reading for. I know that I saw on Twitter somebody, or on my one of the Facebook groups, somebody was posting about, hey, are there any novels you can recommend with lots of slapping of face? That's really cool. I see a lot of people asking, like, hey, do you have any cool reincarnation novels you can recommend? Or, hey, do you have any ones with rebirth, or ones that deal with the underworld, or ones that deal with, like, really savage moments? Of course, like Lamfan in it's escaping me, the Immortal War God. So there's tons of this content out there for people, and all this poll really did was show me, hey, like, everybody likes different things, and I really like that a lot of these novels utilize all of these different elements. So there's something for everyone. Now, we're going to be talking about what next week's poll is after we do the reading, but I'll give you some time to think about it. But the question is going to be, how many Xianxia novels do you usually stay up to date with at the same time? I'll throw you the answers after we do our reading and talk to Deathblade. But for now, I'm going to get him on the line. Guys, hold on for just one moment while I get Deathblade on the line. Hey guys, again, as I just stated, we're having a very special guest on the line right now. We have Deathblade here, Skyping in. It's 11:30 p.m. my time. It's 2:30 in the afternoon tomorrow, his time. I'm glad we can make this work. Thank you for calling into the show.
My pleasure. I'm coming to you from the future in China to talk with you.
Well, at least there is a future. At least you can confirm that there is a future. So I'm all set for at least the next 12 hours, 14 hours, actually. Today, as I said earlier in the show, we're going to be talking a little bit about the VIP access on WuxiaWorld. We're also going to be talking about Will Eternal's different levels and things like that, so people can subscribe to Deathblade's own levels to get the chapters, the releases that you want, whether it's before the release on the site. We're also going to be talking about kind of how it works pertaining to specifically a Will Eternal right now, obviously with Deathblade, because you told me before we started taping that each creator can kind of choose their levels.
Yeah, the intention behind the in-house system was to mimic Patreon to a large extent, in that every translator would be able to set their own tiers and their own levels and their own prices for the chapters.
Cool. So why don't we go through yours really quick? for the people who are coming off of Patreon. Obviously, you don't want to lose all those patronages. You don't want to lose all those patrons. So what are the new levels based on how, you know, they were at Patreon, now they're going to be at WuxiaWorld?
Okay, well, it's kind of a complicated story to some extent because when I did advanced chapters on Patreon originally with I Shall Seal the Heavens, I actually had set up my Patreon before offering the advanced chapters, and then I adapted the advanced chapter system to my existing tiers. So I didn't originally plan out my Patreon for advanced chapters. And after I finished I Shall Seal the Heavens, I took a little bit of a break, and when I came back, I actually did a survey or a study, I don't know what you would call it, but I looked at all of the translators' packages, and then I put together a little spreadsheet and then a little analysis to try to figure out what I felt was the accepted price that people were expecting to pay for chapters. And so that's what I based my new system off of. And my new system for the in-house advanced chapter system, basically, after you get past the first 2 levels, it's $2 per chapter, regardless of how many chapters there are. I have a $1 tier for 1 chapter, which I put it there because I know a lot of people are, you know, really want to see what happens in that 1 extra chapter. Maybe just once, they're not interested in subscribing. So I put that there to make it easy for people to be able to jump ahead and see what happens if they really, really want to. And then I also got requests for something in between the first $1 tier and then the 5 chapter tier. So the 5 chapter tier, $2 per chapter, $10. There is a $5 tier in between those that you get 3 chapters for. And then after that, everything is $2 per chapter, and the tiers go up by 5 chapters each to the very top. So I think it's pretty simple, and I base that again on what my perception of the market was at the time. In talking with other translators, some translators say that it's too cheap. I personally don't think it's too cheap. I think that it's pretty reasonable based on the content that people are getting. And my goal is to obviously make a living at it and make that possible for me, but I'm not interested in trying to rake everybody over the coals and make a whole bunch of money. So,
do you find that you get more patrons by keeping your prices lower?
I think it's too early to really tell. There's too many variables. I was one of the very first to start. No, I wasn't one of the first. I was the first translator to start a Patreon. Again, not offer advanced chapters, but I was the first one to start a Patreon, and then I was one of the first to start doing the advanced chapters. And so that kind of, I don't know, I think that kind of throws it off a little bit. I have a existing fan base to some extent, but I do think that, if you're looking at chapters and how much you're paying per chapter, why wouldn't you want to have a cheaper option? And I do think that it tends to draw more people in. I do think that, yeah.
So when we sign up for WuxiaWorld VIP, obviously you don't work for them. You're just a translator for the site. But when we do this whole subscription thing, right now they're offering a deal where you get 12 months ad-free VIP, plus you get advanced chapter credit. So can you explain how this advanced chapter credit's going to work for this first few months?
Sure. It's basically just a credit to your account. And so let's say you purchased I think it's $50 for a year, right? For VIP. You would then get a $50 credit to the site that you could apply to any translator that opts into that program and any sponsor level tier. Now, I want to point out that like I think you mentioned already, I'm not an official representative of WuxiaWorld. I'm not an employee, and I'm not part of the team either in terms of development or management or anything. So I can't speak of this officially, but my understanding is, and based on what I've seen as how it works with the system right now that I'm kind of testing in a way, basically you get that amount credited to your account, and then when you go to sign up for sponsor tiers of whatever level and whoever, then it will just be deducted. So let's say, for example, you do a 1-year $50 VIP package, and then you want to sign up for my $50 tier. Well, then it would basically be free for you, that $50 tier, because you would have $50 in site credit. Or let's say you wanted to sign up for my $5 tier, then you would end up with $45, and then $40, and then $35, and then $30 until you ran out of the site credit. And so however that site credit, however you use that site credit is up to you. You could make it last for a long time if you subscribe to a low tier, or you might just want to go all the way up, get the highest tier, go way ahead in the chapters, and then the next month, when your billing cycle came around, you'd be charged again, or you could cancel your subscription, and then you'd have to wait until the free chapters come out. Whatever floats your boat.
So basically, everyone who's reading a Will Eternal who is anywhere near ahead is scrambling to buy more chapters because we're in a pretty cool arc right now. I do want to say that is pretty cool though, because if you haven't been subscribing to a Patreon and you were thinking about it, now you can already pay for ad-free, which actually goes to your mobile phone too. Your mobile phone is ad-free as well, and it pays for itself with this offer right now. So that's pretty cool. So if I just worry that with the number of people who are going to jump on this $50 thing for a Will Eternal, you're going to get a lot of spoiler tweets. So I'm kind of like on the fence, like, man, maybe I have to just blow it all on getting through this arc before it's spoiled for me.
Well, I do find that I've found that the people who do have the advanced access don't tend to, go around doing spoilers. People seem to be pretty good about that. So I think we should be okay. But yeah, in terms of how you spend that site credit, do you want to blow it all at once and get all the way ahead or not? That's a hard question. I don't envy you in having to make that decision.
What's really interesting to me, though, is you said that you were one of the first adopters of Patreon, and you were doing it for I Shall Seal the Heavens, which you completed a while ago. But when I look at A Will Eternal, we're already, 600, we're on the public release, we're 578 chapters in. You're almost already halfway through the new book, which I feel like just yesterday you started. Have you already been kind of planning ahead to the next one you're going to cover, or are you going to start another one while you're doing A Will Eternal?
I will not start another one while I'm doing A Will Eternal. I don't ever want to do that again. And another thing I don't want to do is I don't want to start translating something that I haven't already read, or at least read a significant amount of. When I started doing A Will Eternal, I had to do it as I was reading it, and I didn't want to, but there was kind of no other option because of the situation back then. In terms of what's coming next, I haven't decided completely yet. There's a few factors that play into it that I don't want to bore you with right now, but you are right. I'm almost halfway through. It seems like it's going so fast. Part of that has to do, to some extent, with the fact that with I Shall Seal the Heavens, I started out at only 5 chapters a week and then slowly ramped up over time. And with A Will Eternal, I for a few months at the beginning, it was only a couple per week, but as soon as I came back, it was 2 per day for the entire time. So it is going pretty quickly, and I probably will have a better idea of what I'm going to be doing after it in the next few months, I think, because going at 2 chapters per day, I'll finish releasing it sometime early next year, and I'm obviously translating a little bit ahead. There's advanced chapters available, so that's kind of obvious. I'll probably finish translating it a few months before the final chapters get released on WuxiaWorld for free. So yeah, it's going to be a few more months, and then I'll be able to give you guys an idea of what's coming afterward.
Well, I'm really excited for whatever contest you decide to throw, because you're the king of giving away Nintendo Switches, giving away trips to China in partnership with WuxiaWorld, and being one of the spokesperson for promoting that. So yeah, every time there's a milestone, I'm like, oh yeah, what's coming?
I got to put some thought into how to top the previous contests. And incidentally, since you bring up that China trip thing, based on my understanding, Ren, owner of WuxiaWorld, just had a meeting with Argon, should have been a couple days ago, to finalize some of the details about that, and hopefully there will be an announcement about that coming very soon.
Would the person who won already know they won?
They don't know, but we know. I know who the winners are, and he actually told me to contact them, and I have held off a little bit because there's a few things I want to make sure are absolutely settled before I notify the winners, but the winners have been decided, yeah. And just to clarify, they were decided by Argon himself. The details of the contest, it's been a while now, but basically what happened was we got the group of top finalists and then sent them to him, and he was able to look at the things that they wrote and whatever, and then picked the winner. So yeah,
that's pretty awesome. I'm actually really trying to get over there. Beijing tickets are $550 round way, so it's a good time to travel there right now, especially with the dollar's value. Finally, so we've talked a lot about that. I don't want to throw you for a loop on anything. I do want to say though, you've been reading Rebirth the Thief, which is the one that we're highlighting today on the show. I'll be doing a reading right after this video. Are you a fan of the MMORPG style novels? Like, did you read The King's Avatar? Were you into Moonlight Sculptor? Or is this the first one that you've kind of picked up?
I would say probably the first one. That like just the idea of it doesn't really appeal to me very much. And but I was was kind of chatting with Shanks for quite some time, just shooting the breeze, so to speak, during I Shall Seal the Heavens. He's one of the moderators of the subreddit, the novel translation subreddit, and so we kind of struck up a friendship, and he would ask my advice every once in a while for stuff about Rebirth of the Thief, and I'd always wanted to. I told him from the very beginning, like, oh, I'm going to read this. I did. I started reading it and then just got busy. And then when I went to America on vacation after finishing I Shall Seal the Heavens, I binge read a whole bunch of it, and I really liked it. Yeah, it's the only one of the genre that I read, so I guess I can't compare it to others that are in the genre. But I read, I think the first, I want to say 200 chapters roughly, I think is how far I got in before I took a break. And maybe I'll wait till he finishes it and then binge read the whole thing, or I don't know. I haven't decided yet for sure, but I haven't dropped it. I've just put it on hold until I can build up some more chapters, I guess.
Yeah, and we did that poll, and it seems like a lot of people read the novels that way, which I never knew. They don't know the pressure of like looking online and checking the Google Drive to see if a chapter's released yet. The F5 sect is real. I'm telling you.
Well, I'm actually curious to see what'll happen with the new notification system on WuxiaWorld, because honestly, one of the reasons why I never got into that, even with Stellar Transformations, was I binge read Stellar Transformations up to the live translation well before He-Man dropped it. But I just never could get into the following up every chapter, because it was like one day I got busy or something, I would fall behind. And then back in those days, it was like in a forum, right? So like I had a real hard time figuring out where I had left off. And even when in the new WuxiaWorld, it was a similar thing. Like I didn't have an easy way. I didn't want to go to novel updates and like create the reading list and stuff to follow one novel or two or something. But with the new WuxiaWorld bookmarks and notifications, it's going to make it way easier to keep track of what you're reading. So I don't know. I might jump on board to the F5 sec thing. It's definitely possible.
Yeah, the bookmarks I've found have been really, really very useful. I used to be bookmarking every single chapter. My bookmarks bar would just like descend like a calamity down into the well. Like, it was pretty crazy. So I'm actually excited. Like I jumped off Gate of Revelations way back because I just couldn't keep up, and then like I couldn't figure out where I was. Even Against the Gods, I was at chapter 800 something and just didn't have time to read for 3 weeks, and suddenly I don't even know where I am anymore. It's hard to keep up with these novels. If I didn't have so much time waiting for audio to mix down, I don't know if I'd ever be able to stay kept up. But exercising and reading them has been the way to do it for me lately, because about 10 miles on the bike is about 8 chapters, so we're all set to go. Cool. If you had anything else to add, I don't want to keep you too long. I know it's in the middle of the day here, and you're a very busy guy over there with being a father and translating and all this kind of jazz.
Well, it's my pleasure to be here. I don't have anything much else to say. If you're not reading Will Eternal yet, check it out. I don't want to go overboard promoting it, but it's very funny, and we're getting, like you said, to the halfway mark. And honestly, in my opinion, the direction that the story goes in the upcoming chapters, which are available as advanced chapters but have not yet been released for free yet, it's I think going to solidify the fan base in terms of how much they like the character and the overall plot and things like that. So I think the next 100 chapters or so from where it is live are going to be very, very fun and very interesting. And I think that's where a lot of people are going to fall in love with it even more than they already have.
I do have to say, I think it was an advanced chapter when I read it, but I think you've released it now. It's not really a spoiler, so I want to mention it. I was going to tweet you as soon as I read it. Is in these most recent chapters, we actually get a call to the recognition that Bai Xiaochen, right? Bai Xiaochen?
Yeah.
Bai Xiaochen knew that his village hated him. when he scans them with his divine sense and sees, well, he knows there's no drums and gongs. He knows that his village hated him, and it's the first time in this entire story that he actually acknowledges that people hated him.
Yeah, well, I think that's something interesting about his character. I mean, a lot of people view him as just kind of a joke character, but I think he's a little bit more complex than sometimes people give him credit for. And I think that he's the kind of person, and I know people like this in real life who, on a deep level, are aware of personality traits of their own that might not necessarily be desirable, but they convince themselves that they aren't like that. But deep down, they really do know that they're like that. So I think it's a lot more realistic than some people might, give it credit for.
I think he's a victim of circumstance, but he also benefits from the circumstance. It's kind of a weird dichotomy that Argon has created with this character, and I'm excited to see where it goes, because now reading Renegade Immortal, I can see the differences between Wang Lin and Meng Hao. Is that how I pronounce it? Cool.
Yeah.
Great. I'm still
you got the
still
first
getting
one,
there.
Wang Lin, but close enough.
Wang Lin and Meng Hao.
Meng Hao, yeah.
Okay. One of these days I'll be better. But yeah, I'm just excited. I have to go back and he has one more story I haven't read. I can't remember the name of it.
Well, there's the one that's not on WuxiaWorld, which I originally had called Beseech the Devil and then got renamed as Pursuit of Truth. And that's the other canon Xianxia story. The other story called something Against Heaven or something like that, it's complete, but like I think you mentioned in one of the previous podcasts, it was more of an aborted project, sort of. So he doesn't ever really talk about that one. So the main ones are Renegade Immortal, Beseech the Devil, Pursuit of Truth, Access to the Heavens, Now a Will Eternal. And then as for what's coming after that, he has yet to announce it. He keeps teasing it on his official WeChat account. He says that it's going to, he actually said he's already started to write it. So from that, you can learn that the Chinese authors also do advanced chapters and stockpiles and stuff. Anyway, he's started writing it. He's going to release it on June 1st. He hasn't said when he's going to announce the title or the subject or where he's going to release it. But yeah, that's going to be coming in about a little over a month. So looking forward to that.
All right. Well, once he announces it, we got to have you back on here to discuss the stipulations of what could happen. Especially with the end of I Shall Seal the Heavens, it really opens it up for a lot of cool stuff.
Sure.
Thank you so much for coming on the show. Where can people follow you, find you, get your, now that your Patreon is down to $1 donations, what's the link they can go to on WuxiaWorld to, give you more money?
Well, actually, now that you mentioned that, that's something I should point out is that, so my Patreon, I reduced it to just a $1 tier. And I put it on hold for the next billing cycle, but the billing cycle after that, I am planning to release some original content. I kind of need to see how many people are willing to support me to do original content before I make a commitment to how much. I'll probably do that in the next 2 weeks or so. I will definitely have something in June on my Patreon. And so you can just search for Deathblade on Patreon. My YouTube channel is Deathblade. For WuxiaWorld, all you have to do is you can go to the top right menu bar and just hit My Sponsorships, and then you'll see A Will Eternal there. There are a couple other translations that are there, but actually the official release for advanced chapters for all the other translators hasn't happened yet, so I would hold off on supporting them until the official announcement is made. And then on Twitter, you probably know, because you said it recently and I forgot what my Twitter is.
At Deathblade ISSTH.
Yeah, I just pulled that up. Somebody asked me once if I was going to change it to Deathblade AWE, but I think I'm going to keep it Deathblade ISSCH for old time's sake.
Cool. Well, great to hear from you, and thank you again.
It was my pleasure.
Bye. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much to Deathblade for coming on the show, and thank you to you all for still watching. I do want to, shout out really quick AfterBuzz TV. I get to use this facility without having to pay any money because I work for it, but also because of the graciousness of Kevin Undergaro and Maria Menounos at AfterBuzz TV, which is a network that does videos and podcasts for all sorts of TV series. We do over 100 different TV series reviews and discussions here, so check it out, AfterBuzzTV.com. And please check out if you like any TV show. We probably cover it. The Flash is tonight. We're doing Handmaid's Tale. Like any of those, we're into it right now. Into the Badlands is one we're doing. So please check that out again at AfterBuzzTV.com. And thank you to them again for letting me use this facility to tape this show for everybody and not have to break my bank on it. Also, I want to shout out some of my fans, some of the fans of the show really quick. I want to thank you guys for subscribing and going to iTunes and rating and commenting, and even subscribing on YouTube. So really quick, I'll run through a list. Mechanical Bias, Helvetica Standard, Void Radiation, Big Cheesy, Loa Fuchun, Nikolaus Wunschel, Caracas Susastro, Let Laura, Daunted Miss, Thomas Edwards, also on Twitter, Thomas, Mr. Friendly Guy, Akashi Mao, and Vincent Alarcon. Also, I want to shout out Marshall Mass for leaving the comment. I love this, man. Please keep them going. Wuxia and Xianxia need so much more exposure. I agree with you, and I'm going to keep these going as long as I can. And as long as you guys keep wanting them, I'll keep doing them. I enjoy talking about the content, and I enjoy communicating with the community that's out there that loves this kind of content. So we're going to be talking today about Rebirth of the Thief Who Roamed the World. So I really like this story. I know a lot of people aren't really sold on the whole VR MMO style Xianxia novels. King's Avatar is, of course, the most famous one right now. It's got a OVA coming out. It already had a season of the animation that came out. I actually have not read the King's Avatar. It's on my list. It's complete, so I know that I can just rush through it and binge it, but I actually have not read it. And I'm also really enjoying Rebirth of the Thief Who Roamed the World. Again, it's written by Mad Snail. Little Shanks is translating it right now. And it's a rebirth-based storyline that sends our main character back in time to make different choices that affect the world around him. I'm going to go ahead and read the synopsis from WuxiaWorld really quick, and that way you guys can get a feel for what we're diving into with this chapter reading. So, this is the synopsis from WuxiaWorld. The world's largest VR MMO, Conviction, was almost like a second world for humanity. It had integrated itself into the real world's economy with both corporations and individuals seeking their fortunes through the game. In this game, Xian prided himself in his level 180 thief. He could barely be considered among the top experts in the game. Though that was not the only thing he could take pride in. That was the only thing he could take pride in. He was penniless and unable to advance in life, a situation he was forced into by the enemy of his father. If it weren't for the little money he made by selling off items in Conviction, he would have barely been able to eat. In the end, he chose to settle his matters once and for all. He assassinated his father's enemy. He lay dying shortly after being shot in pursuit. However, that wasn't the end of his story. Instead, he awoke moments later to find that he had reincarnated into his past self, armed with his experience and knowledge of future events. He sets out to live his life anew. So the story has a lot of business and political intrigue alongside the gaming elements that you're used to. It also deals with item creation and exploration. If you're a big fan of like Final Fantasy games or like World of Warcraft, you'll really kind of take a liking to it. It's a story that's kind of similar to King's Avatar, Sword Art Online, and Legendary Moonlight Sculptor. But imagine if the main characters of those stories weren't that great at the game, and then they assassinated somebody, died, and then were reborn at the beginning when the game was coming out, with all of the memories of like the releases in the game, the expansions, the items, the story, the canon. So it's a really funny story. I can enjoy everything that Mad Snail comes up with it, and it sometimes, I gotta be honest, sometimes Xian can be a little bit OP, overpowered, but it's still really entertaining. It has a lot of satisfying moments. So I really enjoy it. I think you guys will really enjoy it if you watch it or if you read it. So it's one of those Xianxia novels that are more like candy, where like every time it comes out you're excited because you're like, oh man, I get to like take 10 minutes to read this really fun story. Disclaimer really quick, guys. Of course, I am in California. Like I don't have the pronunciation down to a T for Mandarin, Chinese, like, so if I do pronounce things a little bit wrong, please forgive me. I mean no disrespect. I'm just I'm learning as I go. So today we're going to be using the names. I'm going to say it first how you would expect it to be pronounced if you're just an American guy like me, and then I'm going to say it how it actually is pronounced from doing the research and bothering Deathblade incessantly. So Kaozu is how I would have pronounced it, but it's actually it's Sao Shu. And then we have Niyan is what, as an American, I jump into, but it's Nia Yen, Then we have Ziyun is how I would have read it, but it's Xiaoyao. And then we have Zhuangzhu is how I originally read this, but it's Zhuangsu. So these are the names that are in the first chapter. If I screw them up, please forgive me, but we're going to dive in. It is a bit of a longer chapter, but I think I can get through it in about 10 minutes if I rush myself. So sit back, relax, enjoy. I don't have sound effects. I don't have music this time because this is it's not as much of a like action-packed chapter like WuxiaWorld's first prologue was. So enjoy. Chapter 1, Rebirth. Born into suffering. Suffering leads to death. Parting with one's desire leads bitterness. Bitterness leads into what one does not desire. Being unable to obtain one's desires leads into suffering. In Buddhism, there are the 8 sufferings. Our protagonist had experienced no fewer than 5 of these sufferings. His whole life since birth had basically been a chronicle of tragedies. Fortunately, it was a short chronicle because he only lived to the age of 28 before facing his mortality. Perhaps his life ought to have ended at that point. However, at the moment, fate conceived a single turning point. Xian turned over. A feeling of wetness arose from his back as his clothing clung closely to his skin. It was an uncomfortable sensation. He vaguely recalled having been shot in the back and collapsing onto the ground. His blood flowed out, seeping into the earth. Isn't it just death? He lay there calmly where he collapsed. To silently pass away like this, couldn't this also be considered a peaceful death of sorts? He had lain in ambush for 5 whole days at the gates of the Caoshu mansion. There he waited with great anticipation for his target to emerge. In the moment that Caoshu nearly disappeared into his vehicle, Xian pulled the trigger. Employing his sniper rifle, he delivered a bullet straight through Caoshu's skull. Bang! Blood dyed the ground. Gazing through the scope from a distance, he noticed a hole in Caoshu's head, with blood flowing out smoothly. Caoshu's eyes stared vacantly before finally becoming blank as the light in them gradually faded away. Replaying the event in his mind, Xian felt incomparable pleasure in his heart as he recalled the scene of the bullet piercing through Caoshu's head. Naturally, it was because he had been unburdened of his hatred. Caoshu possessed a lifetime of glory and splendor, yet he died at the hands of a nobody like Xian. Even if he became a ghost, Xian wouldn't be too particularly bitter. In the face of death, everyone was at an equal standing. Even if he had the wealth to rival nations, he still hadn't been able to save his own life. Cao Shu had committed too many evils. It would be hard for him to escape retribution in the afterlife. At the same moment when Cao Shu's brains were blown out, Xian came to a realization. His perspective on life underwent a complete transformation. So everything in life could be determined by no more than a single shot of a sniper rifle. Perhaps tomorrow his picture would appear plastered on the front page of the morning newspaper. The headline would read, "Millionaire Cao Shu assassinated!" Below, a mugshot would lay on the page for the common people to revere and worship. Immediately after Xian had assassinated Cao Shu's personal bodyguards discovered his location and went in pursuit. They shot at Xian and a single bullet managed to hit him in the back. He felt a burst of sharp pain. So this is how it feels to get shot. His heart gradually grew colder as his life force rapidly escaped his body. Am I about to die? He thought, and let out a faint laugh. He laughed at the bitter shortness of life. He laughed at his life of confusion and hesitation. Only when he was about to die did he finally awaken to reality. Shortly after this realization, tears began to streak down his cheeks. The deep animosity he felt towards his parents had already ceased to exist. The events of the past were now replaying within his mind as if they were some kind of film. The only thing he longed for now in his fading time on this earth was her faint, unblemished smile. She was Xian's fellow classmate in high school. By now, she had already been engaged to somebody else, yet her elegant and refined complexion remained engraved in Xian's mind, the same as it was in the past. Following the passage of time, her image became all the more unforgettable. He wondered, when she receives the news of my death, of how will I took Cao Shu out with me? How will she react? Will she sigh, or perhaps will she shed tears in grief? The old memories of the past seemed to breach through their constraints and began flooding in. They were now drifting and floating within his mind. He was quite regretful. Sometimes when you finally realize or understand the truth of something, it's already too late to do anything about it. In this lifetime, he truly had too many regrets, too many unfulfilled desires. Xian reached out to grab at the empty air, wishing to grasp onto something. However, to his dismay, everything had gradually gone out of reach. Alas, his life had finally reached its limit. Up ahead lay only an eternally silent abyss. Remorse and dismay resembled a dagger as it incessantly sliced at his heart. The pain in his chest was unbearable. What wrongs have I committed in my past life for the heavens to torment and punish me in such a way? Xian's grievances soared to the heavens. He was bitter. He screamed resentfully in his mind as teardrops continually tumbled down his cheeks. The moment seemed to last forever, and Xian was actually completely unaware of how much time had passed. Eventually, his mind calmed down and gradually became serene. His mind was still active as he pondered away. Could it be? Is this death? Perhaps I'm in spirit form now? For a long time, Xian felt sensations in his fingers. Moreover, it felt real. Why, after all this time, why am I still conscious? He immediately sat up, surveying his surroundings. He stared out blankly at a complete loss. Could this be the underworld? Xian's dull eyes gradually began to regain their focus as he looked around. A few old things entered his vision. A wooden bed, a chair, a visibly damaged floor. Where is this place? Didn't I already die? He felt as if he were in a dream, having a sort of illusory sensation. He began feeling his back. His entire hand felt wet and sticky. However, as he moved his hand into view, he saw that his palm wasn't covered in blood, but rather sweat. The wet sensation he felt earlier was due to the clothing on his back having been soaked wet in his own perspiration. What's going on? Didn't I lose a lot of blood? He vaguely recalled his blood being red. It was just like red wine, except with a scarlet tint. It was the color of his life gradually fading away. Xian still felt pain after pinching himself. This really isn't a dream. No, don't tell me. Assassinating Cao Shu was a dream as well? Why did it feel so real? It was just as Chuang Tzu muttered as he woke from a dream. Am I Chuang Tzu who dreamt I was a butterfly, or a butterfly who dreamt it was Chuang Tzu? How do you determine what is real and what is a dream? He surveyed his surroundings with a hint of doubt. There were just too many questions left unanswered. Within the dim lighting, there was a shabby-looking wooden bed, chair, and desk. By the wall there stood the grandfather clock his old man loved to exaggerate as a priceless antique. Tick-tock, tick-tock. The sound it produced echoed into the silence. Xian recalled that the clock's time had never been accurate, not even once. It was as if his past memories were stored in an old photo album. They slowly began opening up. This room here feels so familiar. Isn't this the house I lived in when I was in high school? Through the gap in the window curtain, sunlight shone in. He felt a stinging sensation as the sunlight entered his eyes, causing his pupils to violently contract. This was a type of dazzling awakening into reality. I'm still alive! Neon stretched his right hand forward as he gazed at its tenderness and slight immaturity before noticing the sickly pale skin tone. What's going on here? Am I myself from 10 years in the past, or am I myself from 10 years in the future? Xian scratched his hair in great bewilderment. Aligning his train of thought, a few fragments from his memories began emerging. Gradually, they became clearer and distinct. This was the year he turned 18. It was summer vacation, and his parents weren't home. He had developed a 40-degree fever that summer and nearly died. Just a side note, obviously in Celsius, guys. Come on. Only through luck did he manage to keep his life. During that time, his parents had left him with a bit of money. Immediately afterward, they took off without a word of goodbye. They never returned home, not even after 2 or 3 months, and he wasn't able to reach them through their cell phones either. It was as if they had just vanished without a trace. At that time, he believed his parents didn't want him anymore. He was alarmed, terrified, and scared. All kinds of emotions began to plague him and burden him. In addition to this, he had also developed that high fever. The experience left a trauma within his heart that was very deep. He became timid, cowering at the slightest breeze. It took him until the age of 25 to begin correcting that personality to some extent. Only afterwards, when he grew up, did he find out that his parents hadn't abandoned him on purpose. Rather, they had borrowed money from a family friend and started up a smuggling business at the country's border. At that time, the country urgently needed a type of metal called polonium. It proved to be an important strategic resource. Following every nation's discovery of this metal's usage, they rapidly began placing restrictions on its export and started hoarding the resource for themselves. It was unknown how Xian's parents were able to find such a source, although in the end they managed to smuggle the metal back into the country, selling it to the government at several hundred times the price they purchased it for. As a result, they earned a huge sum of money. Their current circumstances at the time were very stressful and nerve-wracking. Thus, Niayan's parents were unable to contact him through the phone. Furthermore, their matters were classified military secrets. If any information were to leak out, it would result in their deaths. As a consequence, Niayan and his parents' misunderstanding became buried in such a way. It took many years after the matter had passed for his father to inform him of the truth, and only then did Niayan forgive the both of them. It was that year when his father had earned his first major payout and used it to establish a smelting company. Furthermore, he undertook and completed several large projects, advancing the company's reputation by leaps and bounds. He resolved his family's plight, and as a result, Niayan was transferred over to a high-class school within the city. Is it possible? Have I returned to that time? I can start all over again from the beginning? Niayan's current emotional state was hard to describe. Pleasant surprise, nervous apprehension, interweaved with each other as his emotions swayed all over the place. He was anxious that everything occurring was now simply a dream. Niayan climbed out of his bed and opened the window's curtains. Rays of sunlight were scalding as they released their scorching heat onto his skin. The sensation clearly informed him that at present, he truly wasn't dreaming. He bent his head down to see that beside the windowsill lay his textbooks arranged neatly on the table. Mechanical theory, automation, language, advanced mathematics, AI design, and so on. Niayan flipped open the few pages. The familiar characters were like a clear stream. Along with his past memories, they rejuvenated his mind. These textbooks represented the youth that had passed by. After reaching his senior year of high school, he transferred to a high-class inner-city school. The projects that his father had undertaken had succeeded. From then on, any materialistic desires he had were easily satisfied. His rise into becoming a well-off son of an entrepreneur caused him to turn lazy and idle. By the time he had graduated high school, his academic marks were definitely less than stellar. Afterwards, his father spent quite a bit of money to allow him to attend a famous university. Only, by the time he graduated from university, he had learned absolutely nothing. He wasted every day sitting around idly. When he reached the age of 25, his father's business started suffering from the attacks of Cao Shu Century Financial Group. Several family members who were also trusted confidants were bribed by Cao Shu into betraying Niayan's father. Thus, his company met with several setbacks in quick succession. Money, once more, had become a concern for the family. His father committed suicide by overdosing on drugs, and his mother fell ill due to the grief. She eventually passed away in the end as well. Only after suffering the pain of losing both his parents did Niayan begin making progress in his studies. Self-studying in numerous courses, however, by that time was already too late. He had simply missed too many opportunities. Once full of longing, Niayan was prepared to hew out a piece of the world for himself. However, how could Cao Shu allow the son of his former enemy to make a comeback? With Cao Shu interfering behind the scenes, there wasn't a single company who dared to hire him, leaving Niayan with nowhere to go. If it weren't for him playing the virtual reality game Conviction, scraping by with what little income he could by selling items, he wouldn't have been able to even eat a meal. He had no hopes of gloriously defeating Cao Shu by rising to prominence as an underdog. However, an anxious hare could still give a nasty bite. Being at an impasse, Niayan's final decision was to take Cao Shu out with him. The sound of the gunshot vented out all of Niayan's resentments and loathing. His destiny seemed bright and clear, so Cao Shu probably never thought his life would conclude in such a way. Niayan believed himself to have died and never expected time to play a joke on him, returning him to the summer vacation of his second year in high school. And though he still wasn't able to contact his parents, he could at least be certain that they were still alive. When he thought of this, tears began filling his eyes. When a son wanted to provide for his parents, yet the parents were already gone, no other person was capable of understanding the bitterness and grief in Niayan's heart. The heavens had given him another chance. He would absolutely never become confused and act indecisively again. It would take a little over 20 days for his mother and father to return home. Since it was summer vacation right now at the moment, he had no choice but to stay at home. That year, in the second half of the semester during my second year of high school, if I recall correctly, the virtual reality game Conviction had just recently been released. Niayan distinctly remembered the scene of countless financial firms establishing a presence in Conviction's rapidly rising popularity on the year of the game's release. They poured tremendous amounts of resources into the large-scale development of this virtual reality game. It was truly due to these numerous financial firms that Conviction deservedly became the second world for humanity. After he entered the high-class inner-city school, he was finally introduced to the game by his best friend. By that time, a semester had already passed. Only by then, many people were already at a very high level. He had already missed the best period of time to begin leveling. Left behind, he had no choice but to try and catch up with all his might. The faded pages of the photo album, his memory, once again turned anew, revealing their bright colors. The most unforgettable moments in his life had come from the time he'd spent in the game. He had come to know so many friends in that game. In the calendar of his life, it was only because of them that those days of loneliness had not appeared too excessively senseless. Prior to assassinating Cao Shu, Xian was formerly a level 180 plus great thief. Though he wasn't at the summit, he could barely be considered to be among the top experts. Xian suddenly recalled that there was a bank card containing all of his life savings in the drawer. I have the money to buy a virtual reality helmet, Xian thought to himself. Pulling open the jar, he turned everything over, searching. At last, he found a silver-white bank card from the corner of the jar. If he recalled correctly, the amount of money stored in his bank account was 2,000 credits. 1 credit, the equivalent of $1. This money had come from him saving expenses on food and clothes over the course of several years. Back then, he wanted to buy the most advanced Model X3 computer. However, by the time he paid the several years needed to save up the money, the Model X3 had already become obsolete. Naturally, his pocket money was not merely this little after his father's business had become successful. Due to his father wanting to make it up to Xian, he gave Xian practically everything he asked for. Something he wanted, if it could be bought, it would arrive. Xian was 18 years old this year. However, he possessed the soul of a 28-year-old self. Everything would once again start anew. From henceforth, a new chapter in his life would open up. However, without the sufficient capital, he wouldn't be able to accomplish anything, so he would start from the game. Using his prior experiences from the game, becoming a professional gamer and earning a little bit of money was a simple affair. Xian remembered the time when Conviction's first gaming helmets had just begun selling. In an effort to make them spread, the prices were unusually cheap. There were 3 entry models, Model A, B, and C. Each entry model's configurations were unique. The immersion level of the virtual reality helmets ranged from 76 to 98%. A sum of 1,300 credits was enough to afford the cheapest model. With the current amount of money Xian had stored in his savings, it was sufficient for him to purchase the lowest tier model virtual reality helmet. He could clearly and distinctly recall many items and things from the game. If he started all over again, it wouldn't be too difficult for him to produce some results. Placing his bank card within his pockets, he shifted his gaze towards the advanced mathematics textbook on the side. As if God himself had just slightly nudged the textbook up, it trembled a little bit before a crisp new $100 bill emerged and fell out. At that moment, he recalled several things as memories once again began floating into his mind. He suddenly remembered that his first meeting between him and Xia would occur today. He had taken the $100 bill and left the house to buy medicine at the pharmacy. Xia was his desk mate during his senior year of high school, as well as the prettiest girl in his class. Once again, he reminisced about this past event, a segment of his life that he couldn't bear to look at without causing his wrists to tremble. After nearly a decade had passed, Xia and the publicly reorganized gifted student in his class, Lu Rui, had fallen in love. The two of them had moved together to the moon. Only after he and Xia communicated several phone calls later did he find out that Xia was not the least bit happy. When matters relating to the past in his senior year of high school were brought up, both of them would sigh incessantly. If he had just been a little bit more courageous, if only he wasn't so gutless and inferior in front of Xia, perhaps he wouldn't have missed his chance. Sometimes there were decisions that lasted for an entire lifetime. There would become regrets that one would never be able to resolve. At the time, Xia always liked wearing a white skirt. Pure and beautiful, her appearance remained engraved deeply in Xian's heart. This sort of melancholic yearning was just like the sound of a flute playing in the evening, tranquil and far away in the distance. Xian glimpsed at the shabby-looking clock, the hands pointing to 3 o'clock. There still might be enough time. He picked up the $100 bill, rushed down the stairs, out and out the door. His family lived in a suburban district. It was extremely bleak, a shabby street that wasn't at all wide, and as the wind blew over, it picked up a lot of dust. Contrary to what one might expect, many trees were seated on either side of the street. Under the blazing hot sunlight, they remained lush and flourishing, casting shade on the earth below them. Greeted with a hot afternoon, no pedestrians could be seen walking by. Cars were also few and far between. Occasionally, 1 or 2 hover cars would drive by. In the past, Xian had loathed this town very much. However, after his reincarnation, as he once again met with this bleak place, Xian did not feel loathing or disgust. To the contrary, he was unexpectedly felt an amiable familiarity. This was the place he lived in when he was 18 years old. Before Xian reached the age of 25, he was timid and weak. It was not unrelated to the living environment of the former years of his life. He was just a little boy from a small town whose family suddenly became wealthy. And because of this, he was transferred over to a high-class city school. Originally, during his first and second year of high school, his academics could actually be regarded as pretty exceptional. However, by the end, it was complete inverse. He was also frequently ridiculed for wearing tacky clothing. In addition to the events that occurred during the hot summer, it caused him to have a very low self-esteem and be left behind with many psychological insecurities. By the time he moved to a new environment, he had already become insecure and timid, seemingly never fitting in with everything and everyone. If he hadn't come to know several good friends, it would be hard to say he wouldn't have suffered a mental breakdown. However, this was in the past. Presently, never did he expect that after going through an entire lifetime, he would return to where it all started. This time, he promised himself that he would never repeat the mistakes of his previous self again. He sprinted off towards the pharmacy. The surrounding buildings looked somewhat shabby. There were no signs of human life. Following the increasing speed of the urbanization process, the people of this small town would migrate towards the dense crowds of large cities, and the area within the small town's borders would become increasingly desolate as the population became fewer and fewer. After 100 years, this area would become demolished and once more change into an open field. Over here is the school, and on the other side is the supermarket. Like an old horse that knew the way, Xian gazed at the surrounding buildings with familiarity. His frame of mind gradually became more optimistic. I've gone back! I've truly gone back! In the past, he had always held a lot of resentment towards his unjust fate. However, now he was grateful towards the heavens. I'm gonna start it all over again! I'll do it right this time! Xian was tempted to scream these words at the top of his lungs, venting out all of the indescribable emotions he had held within his heart. That's chapter 1. Read chapter 2, 3, 4, all the way to where they are right now to get more of what's going on. It's a really fun story. They stay within the game world a lot, and they only exit to do real-life stories every, 5 to 10 chapters. So you'll really enjoy it. I recommend it. I highly recommend this story. I think it's really fun, so please check it out. I do have to wrap this show up, so I want to get into, really quick, the newest poll question for this week. So I want to ask you all, how many Xianxia novels do you usually stay up to date with at the same time? So the first option is 1 to 2, second option is 3 to 4, the third option is 5 to 6, and the fourth option is 7 to 8 plus. I personally would vote for option 4. I stay up to date with about 12 novels at any given time. So I'm kind of a total nerd when it comes to this stuff. So please feel free to tweet at me personally at Stephen Lemieux, STPHNLEMAUX, or you can tweet at the podcast. I'll respond there too. On Twitter at Immortal Index. Please give the show a rating on iTunes, 5 stars, leave a comment. Please hit up the YouTube, subscribe. I'm putting these videos up every week. And if there is time this week, I do want to do a little bit of discussion on the Jade Sword intro. They just put out The Legend of Jade Sword. It's the new scripted series about Desolate Era that's out in China right now. The intro is really cool. You have Wuxia Rocks on Twitter tweeting out about it right now. They have a few videos that you can watch. So I might do something with that. Next week, I can't believe it, but Wudong Qiankun is over on May 8th. It's gonna end. I don't know what to do, but next week we're gonna talk about it. We're gonna talk about the ending of Wudong Qiankun. So make sure you're tuning in for that. And thank you to everyone for watching, and we will see you guys next time on episode 4 of the Immortal Index. Take care.